Oi! You there. Could you help us out, Cully? You? Yeah, you there. Stop pretending you can't see me. Why won't anyone look me in the eye? What'd you go and do that for? Oh, yes, I remember. Some clod turned me into a tree.
Hello, good hunters. No, this isn't a nightmare, but a dream. Because I got to play Elden Ring very early for about 8 hours. And oh my god, we need to talk about this. Quick shout out to FromSoftware and Namco Bandai for sending me the beta test super early. I've been a fan of FromSoftware's Soulsborne games since the release of Demon's Souls back on PS3. I've played all of these titles and have mostly enjoyed them. I've got my favorites and my least favorites, but overall, the time I've spent playing them has been nothing but fun. I love the challenges that come with these games, and the feeling of finally overcoming said challenges has honestly made me generally strive to be better at video games, ever since I completed Dark Souls 1 all those years ago. In 2019, after the release of Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, we would get a trailer at that year's E3 conference. FromSoftware's next epic game was revealed, Elden Ring. Created by series director Hidetaka Miyazaki in collaboration with George R.R. Martin, the creator of A Song of Ice and Fire. A pretty ambitious crossover if there ever was one, but also like the most appropriate one too. George Martin's dark fantasy worlds and stories would honestly fit perfectly in the Souls style, and here we are. So the network test I got to play didn't feature a ton of story content, but there was a heck of a lot of open world adventuring going on in my playtime. Elden Ring at its core is pure Souls. Basic gameplay staples like light and heavy attacks, blocking and parrying make their return for combat. Rolling feels just as satisfying as it always does, and sprinting will get you around at a leisurely pace. Enemies are extremely varied in this open world, and hit very hard. Once defeated, you'll earn a Souls-like currency, this time called runes. When you die, you'll have to retrieve your runes, like in the past games, but I don't think there's any long-lasting penalty to death this time, like reduced HP or hollowing, which is just fine with me, by the way. Every usable weapon has its own movesets and abilities, depending on which hand you equip them to. From what I can tell, basically every battle mechanic from all 3 Dark Souls games makes an appearance here. Illuminating torches from DS2 are usable again, and weapon arts from DS3 have also been added to your repertoire of attacks. Two-handing weapons is still possible, but the mapping for it is super weird. You have to hold the interact button, then press either R1 or L1 to two-hand your equipment. I actually didn't know about this until my friend, Iron Pineapple, pointed it out to me. The beta never expressed this from what I remember, so I kinda missed out on most of the powerful weapon arts until the end of my playtime. Combat feels very similar to the Dark Souls formula we all know and love, which means very responsive, fun, methodical dodging and attacking. You do get a few moves from games like Bloodborne and Sekiro, however. You can actually charge up your heavy attacks, dealing more damage, kind of like a visceral attack from Bloodborne. Free jumping as well as crouching from Sekiro is also present, which is amazing by the way. So real deal stealth is very much possible in Elden Ring, which brings the biggest smile to my face. Ever since DS1, I've wanted to play a legit thief character, and now I can. Took you guys long enough. Jumping felt a little weird at first, mostly because the input is on the X button and the interact button is now triangle. Thankfully, you can customize the button layout at any time, so if that bothers you, make sure you change that. Magic is back and is just as powerful as it usually is. Seriously, when I started my Enchanted Knight character, I was hooked on chain-casting soul arrows, quickly dispatching any enemies that stood in my path. There were a few hidden attainable spells that I found that were totally crazy, like Meteor and the big summon sword. In our co-op sessions, Pine used a healing spell that felt fairly overpowered and actually helped revive my summonable wolves, which, by the way, you could summon enemies to help fight for you in this game, which is really cool too. It seems like with this new grand scale take on Souls, build variety is getting even more attention. Magic and melee combat have always been very viable, but things like real stealth feel good too. I'm sure people are gonna have a blast coming up with crazy hybrid builds in the final game. There was a ton to work with in just this beta test, with the amount of spells, melee options, and ranged weapons, so I can only imagine the limitless potential the full release will grant us. Okay, it's time to talk about the real star of the show, The Lands Between, Elden Ring's open world. When I emerged from the starting dungeon and opened a familiar set of heavy doors, I was stunned by the amazing view that stood before me. What felt like a nod to Breath of the Wild was one hell of an impressive landscape. The massive golden tree off in the distance, overlooking a vast, colorful world, was impossible to miss and admire. Right away you get your bonfire equivalent, the golden grace energy. From here, a glowing light illuminates your golden path. This is a main quest objective marker, a fantastic tool that helps you keep on track while exploring. Dotted across the map are multiple grace points, a new checkpoint system called Marika statues, which are really useful if you die far away from a grace point, and a variety of interesting locales to find. In the beta, I got to cover a lot of ground, basically the entire countryside of Limgrave. From beautiful rolling green hills, 2 dark beaches, a treacherous windy mountain path, and a few optional dungeons, there was a lot to explore and marvel at. Traveling across the open countryside by foot doesn't drain your stamina, which is helpful when a group of enemies jumps out at you from the shadows. Stamina loss only occurs in combat, which is an interesting change that I feel helps the flow of exploration. At a certain point, you'll also get your very own spectral horse that can cover long distances quickly and double jump. Horses control just like your character, responsive and fast. They also get these cool jump pads that you can use to get to higher ground very quickly. Elden Ring's world has a lot of verticality. Climbing a mountain by following the potentially dangerous marked path, or making your own by jumping across gaps in the terrain, always felt amazing and totally rewarding when looking back on where you started. Using the jump button at a particular set of ruins got me and Pine into an area that I don't think we were supposed to explore yet. It was great figuring this out. I felt like I was really platforming, and it was natural too. No animations were breaking or glitching out in any ways, which makes me think there will be a lot of this particular thing in the final game. That ever-present sense of journey from Dark Souls 1 is definitely back in Elden Ring. The lands between have a full day and night cycle, with enemies that only show up at specific times of day. It reminded me a little bit of Dragon's Dogma in that respect. At night, these terrifying bat creatures would jump me in certain parts of the woods, and during the day, human guards will often patrol the roads leading to Stormvale Castle. It's one thing to admire the landscapes during the day, but seeing the visual majesty of some of these places at night really blew my mind and brought the world to life. For the first time ever in a Souls game, I felt like the world itself was spinning while I wasn't around. Going back to stealth gameplay for a second, right before entering the windy mountainside, I came across a camp full of soldiers. I didn't think what I wanted to do was going to be possible, but I somehow managed to stealth kill literally every single guard without raising the camp's alarm. I was taking guys out stealthily and bashing them with my caveman club, and when I was about to be spotted, I used magical blades to shut these guys up quickly. I was doing all of this while looting the camp, finding an armor set, valuable items, and the entrance to a small underground passage where I found a valuable weapon upgrade. It was so rewarding, and by the way, when you manage to kill a full group of enemies, like this camp in particular, your healing and magic flasks replenish automatically, giving you real incentive to do combat in this game, and also one more option in gaining your resources back that doesn't involve you returning to a grace point, which is fantastic because this keeps you exploring the world instead of spending even more time menuing to get your stuff back. After I took out this camp, I rested at a nearby grace point and met a mysterious character.
Greetings, traveler from beyond the fog. I am Melina. I offer you an accord.
Melina is the level-up maiden in Elden Ring. The great thing about her implementation, compared to the other maidens of previous Souls-like games, is that she's a spectral companion, which means she can come with you wherever you go. That's right, y'all. No more going back to the hub zone just to level up. You can do it at any grace point, just like Dark Souls 1. Like I said before, Elden Ring wants you to keep exploring its world, which is just great. One of the key elements to a Souls game are the bosses that block your progress. One thing that caught me off guard, but makes so much sense in this game's context, is that in a few areas, there are full bosses just strolling around. A golden knight atop an armor-clad horse greets you right out of the starting gate. almost letting you know what you're getting yourself into with this game. While trekking across some murky waters, myself and my brave pineapple-shaped traveling companion were intercepted by a massive dragon. After about 6 solid attempts, we were able to best this creature. It was so cool taking this thing on almost out of nowhere like this. Working together, healing each other, landing visceral attacks on its stunned body. There's always been a sense of emergent gameplay like this in the previous Souls titles, but it's clear that capitalizing on that feeling of discovery every step of the way is this game's main goal. The aforementioned dungeons that pepper the open world are cool, but kind of left me wanting more from them at this point in the game's development. The smaller dungeons I encountered felt like I was doing Chalice dungeons from Bloodborne, which is my least favorite part of that phenomenal game. They certainly didn't last as long as your typical Chalice, but herein lies a problem. Maybe they could benefit from being a little longer and feeling more fleshed out in their level design. A lot of the time when you'd reach the end of one of these dungeons, the game would just ask you if you wanted to be teleported to the entrance, which honestly isn't something I want to see in my Soulsborne games. These titles thrive on their folding level design, and that isn't really present with some of these smaller dungeons. They're very cookie cutter, unfortunately. One positive is that they all visually looked distinct from one another, and different types of enemies accompanied each dungeon. At the end of each of these levels, a unique mini boss fight would begin. I gotta say, these guys definitely screamed Chalice boss. You know when you would reach the end of a Chalice, and the boss would either be a recycled basic enemy, or just a total weirdo, almost like they didn't belong in Bloodborne. I got that same vibe from these Elden Ring mini-bosses. There was only one dungeon that didn't lead me to a warp point, and instead had a long passage that emerged into a beautiful isolated island. On this island were the ruins of an ancient dragon's lair, as well as a lot of items to collect. This was an awesome experience. It gives me hope that in the full game there will be a little more diversity and, level design to these smaller dungeons. But as it stands right now, they were kind of underwhelming compared to the rest of the open world gameplay. With that said, I was a little worried in my first few hours of playing because I wasn't really getting a whole lot of classic Souls level design out of the open world and the dungeons, but pretty soon after I bypassed the wind-filled mountain area is when I got to explore Stormvale Castle. Now this is a Souls level. I was pleased because the game felt very open for a while, but then quickly compressed itself back down into a layered, folding castle-like structure that I'm way more used to with these types of games. It's nice to see that FromSoftware made this beautiful open world, but also kept their very strong level design in mind for Elden Ring. Admittedly, I didn't get to see the entire castle, but from the outside, it looks pretty big, with multiple entrances and exits, an NPC to talk to, and a lot of nooks and crannies to explore, finding secret items and enemies. By far the standout moment, right next to stepping out into the open world, is this beta's main boss fight, Margit, the Fallen Omen. This guy is as Souls as it gets. I fought him solo and co-op. Solo, he was kicking my ass royally. It was not fun hearing his win quote over and over again. You bastard. Look, I wanted to fight him fair, but his gosh darn lightning bolts and jump attack were pissing me off. I ended up beating him with all of my magic used up and my summoned wolves helping me out. In co-op is where the classic easy mode is now selectable feeling comes from. His AI could not handle both of us. As difficult as this guy was, it felt absolutely amazing taking him out by myself and being able to enter the castle. It felt like my adventure was just beginning there, but unfortunately that's kinda where the beta's content ran out. Elden Ring has the highest production value a FromSoft Souls game has ever had. The texture work, models, meshes, and animations have been polished to a mirror sheen. The Melina cutscene in particular took my breath away when I realized her mouth was moving when she spoke, which we don't ever see all that much in these games. Something interesting about Elden Ring is that for me personally, I found the game's aesthetic was really similar to Dark Souls 2's aesthetic. Not like the quality of the graphics or the animations, but just like the aesthetic, the way the world looked, the way the soldier-like enemies looked, the way the giants looked. It was all very DS2 to me, which I think is pretty cool. Like, I'm not a hater of Dark Souls 2 at all. The music is also fantastic. I noticed a lot of subtle music cues upon loading into new areas, and the game legit has battle music in certain parts of the open world, like a traditional JRPG. Man, what else is there to say about Elden Ring so far? Well, I can talk about this game all day. There's so much that I came across in my earlier adventures that I can talk about, like the giant flower boss that shot lasers at me, or how about the valley path filled with cosmic horror jellyfishes? Or what about the giant twins pulling a massive carriage on their backs? Or the horseback raiders that totally owned me out of nowhere? There's so much going on in this small strip of the game that has me incredibly excited to experience the rest of it all. There was so much going on in this beta that I missed like 3 dungeons that my friends got in their playthroughs. Somehow in my 8 hours of me playing, I missed content. Like, what the hell? If you're a Souls fan, you'll definitely love this game. It's doing enough new to make the formula feel fresh and alive again. The open world is not only beautiful, but actually worth exploring with its multiple locales, enemy variety, gameplay-altering items to find, and badass bosses to die to over and over again. I've been seeing a lot of discourse around this game with people saying it just looks like an open-world Dark Souls. And, I mean, you aren't wrong, the game is basically Dark Souls 4, but I like Dark Souls. More of a thing I like. Wow, how terrible. Please sign me up. Guys, don't listen to those opinions. They're weirdly salty for almost no reason. I've played a lot of this game already and can say that it's going to be well worth the wait. For now, this tarnished soul will wander the lands between until I can continue my adventures in Elden Ring. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Elden Ring is gonna win so many awards. I already know it. If you guys like this video, please consider subscribing and checking out my Patreon down below. RE4 is next, guys. Get ready. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all very soon. Later.